All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first luncheon of 2021. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Caroline Merck, and I am the chairman of YMWREA for this year. I'm also a vice president at CBRE. To get started, I'd like to introduce Kate Coburn, our former chairman from 1984, to give today's invocation. Kate?
Thanks, Carolyn. Well, no words from me can capture the impact of the last 4 years. I'm not even going to try. But what I'd like to share with you are some words that have been coming to me recently. And those words are, don't take for granted. Don't take for granted your family and your friends. Don't take for granted your health. Don't take for granted the jobs you have and the city we live in. And don't take for granted our country and our democracy. My commitment in the year ahead is to put these words into action. And I hope that you will share that with me moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Very well said. And I'd now like to introduce or recognize the former chairmen who are in attendance today: Earl Altman, Norman Baker, Dennis Carr, Leslie Harwood, Nikki Harriet, David Coppell, Mark Lazon, Greg Shanker, David Browse, Bill Montana, Rob Fink, Jonathan Tutel, Lindsay Ornstein, Camille McGrady, Lenny Lazzarino, and last but not least, Laura Jackson. Thank you all for your continued support. Now we would like to introduce our newest member class, the fall class of 2020. This is a really, really great group of professionals, and I encourage you to get to know them this year and congratulate them on your own as well. So they will now go around and quickly introduce themselves. I recommend you switch your view to gallery or to speaker view, so you'll see their faces pop up when they say hello.
Hello, my name is James Basson and I work at Allianz Real Estate of America.
Hi, I'm Evan Blatt. I work in leasing at RXR Realty.
Hi, my name is Kristen Crossman and I work in retail at CBRE.
Hi, my name is Ariel Curry and I work at Cornerstone Group.
Hi, my name is Sayo Kamara and I work at Cushman & Wakefield.
Hey everyone, Philip Lee. I'm on the investments and acquisitions team at RXR Realty.
Hello everyone, Jonathan Rubin. I work at Fortis Property Group, LLC.
Hello everybody, Patrick Steffens, office leasing at Avis & Young.
Hi everybody, Chris Varjan. I work in investment sales at Lee & Associates.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanisha Wilson and I work at FTI Consulting.
All right, congratulations everyone, and great job to Lauren and the membership committee who did such a wonderful job getting these new members last year. I'm now gonna hand the mic over to James Nelson, who is our membership chair for 2021, and he's gonna discuss his initiatives for membership for this year.
Thanks, Caroline, and congratulations again to the new class, and a special thanks to Lauren and to the membership committee last year. Unbelievable to have 20 new members in 2020, especially while we were virtual for most of it, but just, thank you to the board and all of you for keeping this going, and just really excited by this class. It's a wonderful class that represents all different types of backgrounds, and I think we've really exemplified a real commitment to diversity and inclusion, and excited to continue to build on it. In addition, would love to explore finding new members who are from industries where maybe we don't have strong representation, whether it's from the boroughs, industrial, from mortgage brokerage, and certainly want to hear from all of you. We've got such an incredible membership and leadership, past board members. And so, please reach out to me. I'd love to get your thoughts on who would make for great members. You can email me at james.nelson@avisandyoung.com, or you can feel free to call me as well, and would love to talk to you not only about specific people who you might have in mind who would make great new members, but also industries or areas that we might want to expand on. And part of that will also kind of be going through our existing list of about 350 members and finding out, making sure that we have adequate representation from the major New York City landlords, and not just representation, but we want people who are obviously active and involved. And that's really the last piece of it. To me, I think membership isn't just attracting new members. I mean, that's a big part of it, but it's also, having real membership engagement. And we were certainly fortunate, the people on this webinar and the people who showed up for our few in-person events, whether it was the golf or the charitable events. We have an incredibly strong, core group, but we also want to engage those who might not have been attending. And we want to reach out to them as well. So couldn't be more excited for a great new year and working with the new board. So I look forward to working with you all on this.
Great. Thank you, James. I'll now hand it over to Lauren Calandrillo, who is our vice chairman for this year, and we'll discuss upcoming events.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I just want to announce that this Thursday, January 14th, starting at 6 p.m., we will have the Issues and Actions Committee meeting. This is the meeting where we go over the events for the year. Obviously, last year we had to get very creative with our events. This year we have a little bit more foresight on how we can plan and what we can plan, but we are looking for ideas and people who have ideas for events and want to get involved and help us create another great year. So please RSVP to me directly, and I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday.
Thanks, Lauren. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers, Rachel Loeb and Chad Tredway. Rachel Loeb is the Chief Operating Officer of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, where she oversees and directs the corporation's strategic priorities for real estate, asset management, and planning. Chad Tredway is a managing director and head of the real estate banking business within the commercial bank at JPMorgan Chase. He manages a team responsible for delivering products and services to top-tier developers, investors, operating companies, investment funds, and REITs. Thank you both for being here, Chad and Rachel. Definitely looking forward to a great discussion with you both. I think we'll start out kind of understanding more about your career paths and advice for people starting out in their career or during their career. Move over to talking a little bit about the current market and the impacts of the pandemic. And then lastly, we will open up the floor to questions from our audience. So if anyone has questions or things they'd like us to ask Chad and Rachel, please utilize the Q&A feature and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. So Chad and Rachel, I think if we'll start off with Rachel, if you could just introduce yourselves, give a little more color on your background and your career and how you got to where you are and discuss kind of your current role today.
Thanks, Caroline, and thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to speak into the Zoom void, if you will, but and particularly to be here with Chad. I'm a transplanted New Yorker. I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas City and went to university just outside Chicago. And I had always been interested in other places. I don't know if it's something about the Midwest, but you're kind of always looking to your left and to your right and where else you might go, and had a family that was interested in travel. And I was a history major and an Asian studies minor. And so like most liberal arts major, had no clue what I was going to do with my career. And so I picked up my backpack and went to Asia because I had done a study abroad in Vietnam during my junior year and decided that I wanted to go back there for some time. And it was during my backpacking travels that I started to appreciate and become curious about cities and why different cities in Asia were configured, some the same, some differently, and literally found out that there was something called urban planning, of which I had no idea that there was this field. And so when I got to Vietnam, I said, and this was 96, and the country was just opening. It was like watching Economics 101 happen. And I was fortunate enough to be a 22-year-old person who talked her way into a job with a joint venture of a Taiwanese Vietnamese joint venture doing a whole new city development outside of Ho Chi Minh City, because I just said I wanted to be around development. And they needed someone who could speak English and do marketing. And it was through that I just dove into urban planning and development. We were building the first export processing zone. Literally, SOM was our master planner. I got to meet the head of the urban design group out of San Francisco and learned on the ground how you build a city from scratch, from paper, and then what it means, and then try to recruit developers. No clue what I was doing. But I did know that this is where I wanted to go. And so when my time there ended, mostly because my GREs were going to expire and I didn't want to take them again, I started to look at schools. And I was fortunate enough that the gentleman who was the head of urban design for SOM in the country helped me think about graduate schools. And he says, do you want to be the person putting the trees on the piece of paper? Or do you want to be the person telling the person where to put the trees on the piece of paper? And I said, ooh, I want to be the telling, because I actually am not very design oriented. And that's what led me to figure out what kind of graduate school to go to. So I went to MIT and I did both urban development, a lot of real estate classes, though I didn't do a real estate development degree, and was always really interested in this intersection of public-private work. And when I came out of graduate school, there was a recession. And so I was really fortunate to be able to get a job with a small planning firm that, and actually like a consulting firm. They did public and private work. And it was through them that I was doing, economic development planning, consulting for towns, but then also we had private sector work. And I fell in love with the development and just said, this is what I want to do. So when my husband and I, who I met there, we moved to New York City, I said, I just want to work in development now. That's all I want to do. And again, through relationships, the job I got out of graduate school was through relationships. And then I had been called by a headhunter for a job with Avalon Bay, and we had done a lot of work for Avalon Bay in Boston. And so I was really fortunate to join Avalon Bay when we were just entering the New York City market, and rode that 2004 to 2011. And I was fortunate enough to be able to stay through the recession and build, 3,000 apartments throughout the region, high rise, and really learn what it means to be a top-notch developer. I'm doing the lightning round, Caroline. And then because it all ties together. And then I said, I want to also have to raise debt and equity. So I moved to a small family company that was a boutique development firm called Worldwide, where I was really responsible for everything, for all my deals. And it was much more opportunistic. We did air rights deals, assemblages, workouts, developments, and we had to find the money. So that was excellent. And I did that for a long time. And then I had always been drawn to public service. And so when I was trying to think about what was next, it just so happened again through a friend of a friend, late night coming home from, I think, a ULI event after probably one too many drinks, I told her in the cab, I'm figuring out what's next and interested in public service. And she happened to be really good friends with the president of EDC. And she texted him that night, also a little bit tipsy, and saying, you need to hire my friend. And because they were looking for this position. And it was the portfolio was this culmination of everything I'd done, because I have planning, I have development, I have real estate, and I have construction. And so it's all in one, plus managing a big team. And so that's kind of my journey. And then thought I'd be doing one thing, and now I'm in pandemic economic development response.
Great. That was really, really helpful background and very interesting. I think starting with Asia sounds like an amazing way to jump into such a cool part of the world, especially with the real estate there. So Chad, I think if you could give us kind of a similar synopsis of your background, that would be really interesting as well.
I love it. I mean, I wish my background was as awesome and as worldly as Rachel's, but you'll have to settle for a more subdued version. Caroline, thank you for having us on here. Super pumped to do it. By the way, lots of new members. I love that. So it's really great to see it. I was able to kind of listen in a little bit. Congratulations to all of you. We really respect the organization. So excited for the next 45 minutes or so. So I'm a little bit different, also from the Midwest like Rachel. I'm from Chicago. And my story's a lot of people's story. Wanted to get into real estate. Why? It's super tangible. You don't have to be a Mensa. And really, I tell my team, if I can't do the math on like the back of a napkin, we probably don't need to do the deal. So today I lead JP Morgan's real estate bank. We bank the biggest real estate owners and operators across the country. JP Morgan is the largest multifamily lender in the country. We're the second largest real estate bank besides Wells Fargo. And I actually got started by accident. So at a time similar to where we are today, but it was the Great Recession. I was working at the bank. I was an investment banker, and someone said, hey, look, we need people to volunteer. We just bought Washington Mutual. The place is an absolute mess. We don't know what to do with this real estate. And that's kind of how I got started. So I lived in a hotel in Florida for 2 years, which is insane. I met my wife, and to Rachel's point about drinks, if you ever want to hear about what happened in Florida over a 2-year period, I'm happy to tell you over drinks. And then I kind of just moved up from there. So I lived in Miami, I lived in Chicago, I lived in California, and then I moved to New York about 7 years ago. And I've done all facets of real estate, from credit to selling loans to building our small balance franchise, and then now to our largest borrower business. But the key takeaways are, one, what you'll hear in Rachel and my story is be very flexible. The ability to move around is really important. 2, relationships do matter. So I've been working with my current boss for 10 years and love the guy. And I've been really fortunate to work for Al Brooks. And the third thing too is just be intellectually curious. So if you hear Rachel's story, the key theme is just her curiosity. And even when we prepped for this, just getting to know her a bit, it's obvious to me she's incredibly curious. So those are kind of the big 3 themes for me. But really excited for all of you guys, because I think now, similar to back in the Great Recession, is the perfect time to really get going, to build your career and to build opportunities. One of our biggest clients, who's a household name, I was talking to him, we're in his office, like huge plate glass window overlooking Central Park. And on his desk was this sign that said, trouble means opportunity. And so for all you guys, like COVID-19, what's going on right now, trouble means opportunity. It's really time to get to work. All right, Caroline, back to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's a really good piece of advice. I guess kind of going along, tying into your career paths, I'm always personally interested to hear if you ever had a mentor, either formally or informally, or anyone you looked up to kind of as you were navigating your careers. And if you had one previously or still have one today, just kind of your thoughts on that.
You want me? Okay. Oh, okay. We have our order. Okay. So I'll go
Either
first.
way.
So, and thank you, Chad, for your very generous comments. I think relationships are really, really key, and sort of finding those people who you click with. And, I have a few very important mentors, whether or not they knew it for sure, and it was like an official, relationship. But and for me being, I'm so happy to see many more women in the industry, but at the time, somebody so the head of the Vietnamese, the Taiwanese company that was the investing partner in Vietnam, there was the chairman and then there was the president, and her name is Frances Ba, and she started out as a secretary and became as president and the president. And she was amazing to watch and model I learned many things by watching her. And also, she was working within a cultural construct and sort of learning how you flex and change and talk to different people, and being opportunistic about how you flex and change and talk to different people and being smart in an advantageous way. I learned a lot from her. She said to me, men, I'll never forget it, men don't like to look stupid, so they won't ask questions. You can use that as your advantage because men want to look smart to women. So she encouraged me to talk and ask questions and use that as a way to get information that you then have more information than someone else because you ask questions and you've been able to get additional information that maybe your counterparty wouldn't. It was something that stuck with me. But But one key, the woman I worked for out of grad school in Boston, she very much had this private public sector career that was amazing. And she developed a lot of the major buildings that you would know in Boston, but then also worked, as the receiver for when Chelsea went bankrupt and like worked through that. Then she started her own firm, and now she is in charge of the entire real estate for all of the state of Massachusetts. And she talked to me a lot about that tacking in and out and what it can do for you as a career and the opportunities and different learnings. And I stayed very close with her, and I even told her, so a lot of there was a lot of those conversations. And then I would say the gentleman who hired me at Avalon Bay, Fred Harris, if anyone knows him, is like the mentiest, smartest, most wonderful man out there, has been like a true teacher and a dear friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like that advice of, utilizing being a female to your advantage in a room full of men. I think a lot of women on the call can relate to that. Chad, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
I love it. I'm learning something every day. I'm going to make sure I ask 5 questions every single meeting that I go to. All right. So first, if you think about the job you have now, chances are you got that job through some type of relationship. That's just how things work. You can't make it without relationships. So I would tell you mentorships, relationships, sponsorships, super critical. You cannot make it without it. Every successful person I know has got a great network of relationships, and relationships are really what drive your career success. I'll never forget Melody Hobson, who's the president of Ariel. She's on the board of Starbucks. She is on the board of JP Morgan. We're in this huge auditorium. Melody comes out. She's absolutely amazing. She sits down. Someone asks her the question about mentors. She like looks into the crowd. She like stops and she says, "Most of my mentors are dead." Like, we're all like scratching our head. What does that mean? And then she goes on to say how much she reads, all the YouTube videos she watches, how she studies history. And it's just a reminder to me that, one, like, never stop learning. But 2, you really do need people, because people have kind of blazed the path that you want to, just like Rachel talked about. And if you're really smart, you get, really good at reading, learning, and understanding. So the challenge for this group is, whether you're going to go talk to someone new today, or you're going to build a new relationship, or you're going to read something, I would just say pick one of those 3 things, write it down right now. And then after we get off this call, buy a book, start a conversation, but just figure out how to get a little bit better and learn something new. My boss, Al Brooks, I've been with the guy for a decade, and he's the one that really thought through the real estate composition of JP Morgan. He knew what he wanted to do 30 years ago. So to be able to work with him, to Rachel's point, and really be able to watch how they absorb information and navigate things is something that I've done. And I'll never forget, when I was an analyst, I started in investment banking, and we go to this meeting and the managing director sounds like they really know what they're doing. And after the meeting, I just said, "How do you know what to do?" And the person said to me, "Chad, fake it till you make it." Because in the beginning, you're not going to know. But if you mimic others that do know, eventually you're going to wake up one day and you're going to say, "Oh my God, like, I know way more than I ever expected." And through osmosis, I picked up some really good skill sets.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely, faking it till you make it is good. I feel like I do that on Zoom a lot, just learning how to knowing the functions. And I really liked what you said about, maybe it's not, relationships don't have to be going out and meeting a million people right now. I think we all realize that's hard, but maybe it's learning and reading a book, or, reading the articles, and then that can just lay a foundation to develop relationships in the future. So also to kind of piggyback on, the importance of relationships in career development. Obviously now both of you are very established and kind of are on could be on the more powerful side of a relationship. So I'd love to hear how you use kind of your position and now Empower to kind of help increase diversity in our industry. I know James, when he was talking about membership goals, our organization is looking to increase diversity, and I think that's a reflection of real estate as a whole.
So when I joined EDC and I realized we can come back to Carolina and actually get a chance to tell everybody what it is that we do. So we can come back to that to put it in context later. But I have to say it was a really eye-opening to me. And I felt really behind the ball, and this is before all the conversations in the last year, of thinking myself a progressive person who thinks outside the box and, is, I'm a woman, so, what equity means and creating opportunities, how many blind spots I really had. I've been fortunate enough that, I went to Northwestern and then I went to MIT and, and sort of thinking about, where are my networks and where do I find qualified people? And it has been a huge learning curve for me to think about my own biases that I bring about, opportunities and whilst my family is second generation, my grandparents are, we're Holocaust survivors. And so we kind of pulled our, family back up within, a generation and a half, really being open to the privileges that I've been afforded. And so by working in a place at EDC, recognizing what do we define as qualifications? Where do we look for high quality talent? Where are we putting in unintended barriers to bring in diversity, not only just for diversity's sake, but for the points of view and because we represent New Yorkers. And so we need to have New Yorkers working at our organization. So where do we look? If we say that, all of our planners have to have graduate degrees and all this stuff, and we only look at certain schools, well, we're only going to get white guys as transportation planners. But if we say that we recognize that the other schools in New York City are meeting a population, and we go and we look hard and we do the hard work and we hold our managers accountable, and we actively recruit at the, the historically black colleges, and we work hard and we hold people accountable through metrics, it is amazing. You can find talent. And so it has been probably, as a manager and as a leader, my most shameful, but also the biggest growth for me about my own biases, about how I find talent in the real estate profession and what I can actively do and use my power to change the makeup of this industry that I actually love so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're, comparing it to New York City as a whole, and it should, people working at the EDC should reflect the city. And I mean, any company, I think that's really true. I really like that comparison. Chad, would love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to talk about it. I'd say it's really interesting because sometimes when people start talking about D&I, it's like very easy for all of us to kind of just be like, yeah, it's something that I don't really have to focus on. I mean, and with everything that's going on in the country right now, if we're all honest with ourselves, there's like a lot of people talking about D&I, but it's really difficult in our day-to-day kind of lives to figure out what to do with it. And even for me, like when the whole George Floyd thing happened, it was like, call your nearest black friend. Like I got so many calls from people trying to figure out what to do. So maybe what I'll do just for you guys is give you a couple things to think about, because I think this will help you frame what you do going after this call. The first thing I'd say is like, we all want the same things, right? So you all want to be treated fairly. You all want the ability to rise in your organizations. You all want the ability to have like a better future, and hope is like a real thing that people need to propel themselves to do things to make themselves successful. And what I think about and what I, really challenge my team to do is just to be really thoughtful about being in someone else's shoes. It really is like that easy. And for a lot of us, it's just the network. So I thought Rachel did a good job describing it. And so my wife and I had to take stock of our own network. Like, do we have a diverse network? Do we have, all types of people that are around us, all religions, all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds. And if you just take a second right now and you think about like the 5 closest friends you have, do they all look like you? Do they all sound like you? Do they all operate like you? If so, like you should go and just make a friend that is different than you. Starts there. And the second thing that my team has started to do is just like call ourselves out on our bias, right? So I'm from Chicago. I ran track. Like if any of you guys ran track and you came to grab a coffee with me and you started talking about running the 400, I don't care. I'd probably love you instantly and want to give you a job. And that happens pretty much all the time, right? So all the guys that went to Texas want to hire Texas guys. All the folks that went to MIT like Rachel think MIT is really smart. All the guys that live in Tribeca want to hire Tribeca people. And that's just what happens. So I think it starts with one, being like super deliberate on what your biases could be and like being honest about it and have someone that can call you out. And then 2, just be super deliberate, not only in the office, but in your everyday life, and ask your coworkers. Like we had a session with my team and we just started talking about all our friends. And what we found was that the guys from Texas all had friends that were just like them. The people from New York had friends that were just like them. And we all kind of do that. And the challenge for this group is break out of it. Have a little bit of courage. And if you don't have friends that don't look like you, like go find a few.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I like that you can, start within yourself and kind of start that immediately. So thank you both. Switching back to Rachel. Yeah, I realized we didn't give you a chance to give much of a background on the EDC, but I think it would be really helpful if you could kind of talk about what the EDC does, and then maybe transition into talking about how kind of your role has changed given the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great, thank you. So before times, right, like before March 13th, I guess, I'll describe what EDC did, and then we're still doing it for sure, but then how actually we pivoted over the last 10 months, both to meet the immediate needs of the city, but also I think long-term in how we do our work. So EDC, for those who don't know, is we're actually a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization of about 500 professionals with a contract to the city of New York. And our mission is to build strong neighborhoods and create great jobs. So what is that? How do we do that? So, because we are a corporation, we've got your marketing people and your accounting and all your HR and back of house and tech folks. But then we have different shops. So we have our policy folks who think about what are those great jobs of the future. Where should we grow the economy? They look at cybersecurity, for example. We see like Chad's bank, endless needs for cybersecurity, right? Same thing, not just tech firms. So how do we create pathways? We identify need, and then how do we create pathways into that for New York, or into those jobs for New Yorkers? Life sciences is another example. And then supporting traditional industries like fashion and manufacturing and things like that. And we have a toolkit. So how do we do this? Well, we can do it through IDA financing, bond financing. We're the ones who do the tax incentives for the city that are approved by the state. And then we also do public-private partnerships. So our real estate team might look at an underutilized asset. We'll take it through the rezoning and bring a private partner in and say, you know what, we'll trade on that value. Maybe it was a 1-story building and we rezoned it to a FAR of 12. And we'll trade on that value creation that we've made in order to hit policy objectives. So we'll say, you know what, in exchange for all this value, we want you to do certain MWB contracting, or now we're moving into thinking about climate change, or we want you to put a tech training center in there, or we want to, whatever our policy objective is, we use that value creation to do that. We also have a planning department. We look at transportation planning, moving freight across the city, looking at rezonings. We did the garment center rezoning in Wood. We think about how do we create new commercial nodes. So looking at building up new commercial nodes around like transit-rich centers. And then we also do a lot of capital work. So on a normal year, we're doing 8 to 10 billion of construction on behalf of the city of New York. We built the High Line. we'll do industrial parks, we'll do ballparks, roads, sewers, parks. We did the entire Long Island City waterfront, so different things like that. And then the biggest contract we have is we are actually one of the largest asset managers in the city of New York. So we manage 60 million square feet on behalf of the city. So everything from all the ground leases on 42nd Street when they did the redevelopment there, to the Brooklyn Army Terminal, where we actually are doing space leases as small as 1,000 square feet to support upstarting manufacturers, to industrial parks in the Bronx. We manage the entire cruise terminal on the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, on and on and on. The airport leases. So all of that is within that. And so then we also are the linchpin to the private sector. So how can we support private sector growth in the city of New York? So that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. Over the last 10 months, once COVID hit, we were called on, like every agency, to meet the evolving needs and emergencies. So first it was my team dredging the Hudson so that the USS Comfort could come in and dock at the cruise terminals, to building pop-up hospitals. But then when the federal government, failed on delivering basic services around testing, PPE, and other needs to meet the crisis in the spring, we said, well, what can we do? How can we take an economic development lens, not only just sort of like meeting the health needs? So we actually used our contracting power and built in New York City all the testing capabilities that you see today. So the reason you can get a test result within 24 hours in New York City is because we built the test supplies here with local partners, local private partners, put thousands of people back to work. We worked with the educational and hospitals and Alexandria Center to build our own lab, so that once those tests are coming, there's a robotics company and NYU that partnered together to churn 24/7 those test results, the pandemic response lab. Also putting hundreds of people back to work, as well as keeping all that money on testing within the New York City ecosystem. So we worked with local manufacturers and taking out of work Broadway workers, seamstresses, to make gowns and masks and all this stuff. Again, putting people back to work and meeting the immediate need. And so this also is, and none of this would have been possible if we didn't have these relationships. We could literally call them up on the phone and do it. And then also because we have been laying the groundwork for life sciences in New York City. And so being able to call up those relationships and saying, let's do it here. And that is one of the recovery pathways for the city, is to continue on that trajectory. So we're doing that now. I'm in the vaccine business. So once the mayor and the governor sorted out their stuff on vaccines distribution and execution, you may have seen in the news lately over the last few days, the city's standing up more and more facilities. So we converted some of our testing sites that are at EDC assets into vaccine centers. We announced a wonderful partnership with Mets today, where they're going to be doing vaccine sites. And then we're working with the hospitals to help them build out more capacity to get more shots in people's arms, because as we see it, the sooner that people are vaccinated, the sooner the economy goes back to work.
Yes, definitely. And I'm excited to say I already know a few people who have gotten the first round of that vaccine. So thank you for your team's hard work and what they do with that. So you mentioned a couple times the life sciences industry, and I think that's been an industry that we've kind of all been, that's been primed for growth, and we kind of think is going to all take off in New York. I would love to hear, well, maybe start with Chad, his thoughts on the life sciences industry, and then I'd love to circle back to you, Rachel, to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'd say, look, it's interesting because it's really not just New York. It's New York, it's Boston, and we're seeing a lot of clients go into it, Tishman Speyer, Blackstone, et cetera. And it is hot, and it'll continue to be hot. And I'd also say too, with things like pandemics and what's happening in healthcare, it's a sector that we really, think has some legs. I'd be interested in Rachel's opinion on it. I'd also, Rachel, I'm going to call you and see if you can get me to the front of the line so I can get a vaccine. My wife's pregnant. I got 2 small kids at home. I can't wait to get a vaccine so I can get out of this house and get back to work. But what are your thoughts on life sciences, Rachel? You're really at the epicenter of it.
So, I'm not sure because it predated me, but as I said, we have all these brilliant minds who are looking for, opportunities to grow and diversify the economy of New York. And a lot of that work started under the Bloomberg administration of thinking about different opportunities. I'm sorry, my dog decided to
very cute dog.
Going to be very sad when we go back to work in school. So for a long time, it was like, okay, why are we behind Cambridge? Why, if you look at the number of actual Nobel Prize people in the life sciences, Rockefeller University, it's quite an astounding when you do the research, the amount of, and with Columbia and NYU and all these academic institutes, the ideas are here. They're actually generated here. The patents are here, and then they leave and they produce it somewhere else. And so the strategy and the research team at EDC started to diagnose, like, well, why? And part of the issue was there wasn't enough wet lab space in the city. Mm-hmm. So why wasn't there enough wet lab space? Well, as I'm sure many of you on this call know, it's incredibly expensive to build. This price of real estate, you have a market, a commercial market space going like this. All of the factors that make New York City great were also limiting to it. There's a clustering that needs to happen. And so 4 years ago, the mayor announced a life science initiative program, putting hundreds of millions of dollars towards this. And as I mentioned, we use different tools. And one of them was, I know he's going to be a part of this conversation, sorry.
No problem.
Is looking at how do we mitigate that extra cost to take for wet lab space. And so, for example, a year ago, gosh, time is hard, right? I don't know how long ago, but we did an IDA deal with Deerfield, who's converting an office building on Park Avenue. And that's an example of where, again, we took our tools and we said, okay, we will, how much is that cost from doing a conversion to wet lab? And we'll look to help finance some of that cost through tax savings in exchange for a laundry list of things they're obligating. And there's, they're on a lease with us now, policy objectives, they're investing in, it's not just about creating a space, like who's going to be in it, making sure there's access to startup companies, investing, getting more women in science and in the boardroom, investing in women and minority-owned life sciences companies who don't, see as much capital. So again, we use money and we use different tools to get policy objectives. We also have an internship program where we're helping people from the CUNY schools and other programs get access to good quality life science internships and creating those partnerships between academia and the corporate businesses. So we have a life sciences advisory council made up of brilliant minds who are helping us guide where we should be using limited and precious resource capitals. And you will be seeing throughout the next several months, and we've been working on this before, a series of announcements of where that capital is going to be invested, partnerships throughout the city, and helping create that cluster. Because we might not be Cambridge, but we want to be behind, we want to be a close number two, and we want to see that Northeast corridor of research all the way down from North Carolina. There's no reason why people shouldn't, when they get back on Amtrak, be getting off here to do life sciences work and then continuing their way up to Boston.
Right. And I've always thought, with New Jersey, with all the pharmaceutical companies, like it does seem like we have this missing piece, and the concept with the clusters is really interesting, that if we can start that and have it expand. I think sometimes people think, oh, it'll take one big person coming in, which sometimes that happens with other industries, but life science is very different, what it sounds like. Great. So I think it would be helpful. I think a lot of people right now on this call are very optimistic about New York and New York City, and can get frustrated on the press kind of painting a very bleak picture of our city to the rest of the world, I would love to hear both of your thoughts on the lasting impacts that you expect from COVID, both in the short term and the long term, and kind of how you see us coming back as a stronger city than ever.
All right, I'll hop on this one. So first, I'm very bullish on New York. I'm very bullish on real estate. I think, 2021 has the opportunity to be actually a banner year if we can get the vaccine rolled out. So Rachel, again, thank you for helping us figure out how to facilitate that. And the thing that's kind of fascinating to me is someone from Chicago is I always looked at New York and like dreamt about working here, like dreamt about Park Avenue, thought it was really great. New York's the epicenter of so many things: fashion, hospitality, retail, real estate, banking. It's just, this is like the place to be. And so it's crazy to me when you listen to the press and it's like everyone's going to leave and New York's not going to make it. And short term, yes, you could have some disruption over the next 3 to 4 years. Do things, kind of struggle a bit? They could, but any person that wants to do banking or fashion or be on Broadway is going to want to be in New York. And I strongly believe that. I also think New York will snap back way faster than people think. So if you're a younger person, you want to be in New York. Why? You want to go to a bar, you want to hang out. Proximity is a big deal for people. And there's so many great universities here. I think COVID, when we're past this, will drive the city, to come back together. I think things will work out just fine. And I'm long-term bullish on it. Office, though, is very difficult. So it's one thing I don't know. It's hard to predict what's going to happen with office. Are we going to have, like at JP Morgan, we've got high velocity work desks where you've got a ton of people on one long table. Does that cease to exist? Probably. Are you going to have more technology? Will people work from home more? Yes. But long term, I think, look, at JP Morgan, we're very bullish just on New York City long term, and think we'll ride out kind of this short term disruption. And I bet you, at least I'm hoping this time next year, we'll think back on this and we won't believe how fast the city snapped back.
Yeah, I think that would be a wonderful outcome. I definitely agree. Rachel, love to hear your thoughts as well.
So, of course, I'm bullish. I'm a New Yorker by choice. I choose to be here. I choose to live here. I believe all the things that have attracted people to New York City for 400 years. Whether it was whatever brought the initial attributes of the land that brought the Dutch to see the opportunity, and make that trade with the original population here. Some of that's still there. That doesn't go away, right? The location and also the opportunities that it affords people. I think what was hard, and I think, press loves to dump on stuff, right? That's their job. I think it's been a bit of a whipsaw and a boomerang, but for all of us who are here, it was hard. It was really sad, and it was really scary, and it was really depressing. And I think that what COVID did was it brought to the fore all these issues that had been simmering underneath the surface for a long time around equity and justice and other things that were just like ripped bare. And the city's going to have to contend with that and make sure that as we come back, it's a more inclusive, equitable place, because it can't just go back to the way it was. And I don't think it will. But along the lines of what Chad said, also, in the spring, part of the attraction to New York is like FOMO, right? Like, did you see this play? Did you go to this restaurant? And or did you see the show at the museum? And when there's no FOMO, there's like nothing that magnet's not pulling you here. And so getting those institutions back up, getting those things that are only in New York, right? The Met is nowhere else. The MoMA is nowhere else. Broadway is nowhere else. The hotels, the sites, the visions. I mean, I know late night when I'm trying to feel better and I'm binging something on TV, there's a reason why they want to show that energy and opportunity about New York. And it was, I see everything differently, like all the New Year's Eve, shows that without the crowds, but it was so important to the city to have those events happen. Not only, you know, it showcased New York City, right, across the world, and reminding people about that, but it also put a lot of people to work that night and in preparation. So I am optimistic. I think once we get that FOMO, once we get all those people coming back, that the pull will be here. But like Chad, I don't know what the future of office is. I mean, I'm excited to be back in the office. I was in the office all fall. We've sort of pulled back a little bit as the numbers have risen up again, but we'll be back as soon as we can. And maybe we'll work differently, and that's probably not the end. It's probably a good thing too, to have a little more flexibility in our lives.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I think you're right that New York has the infrastructure and the institutions that draw people in. Just hopefully with this vaccine and everything's able to open, I agree that, you know, those institutions kind of prime us for a quick recovery. In the FOMO.
And if you haven't been to the Met, like, it's a great time to go because nobody's there. So I highly encourage you all to get tickets and go. It's wonderful because you can.
Yeah, I need to go hit all the museums. I loved how uncrowded it was. So everyone should go do that. I'd love, Lauren, if we have some audience questions for them to answer, I'd love to flip it over to you.
Sure. So first we got a comment, cute dog, Rachel, which I definitely agree. I think we all do. So we had two separate questions that I think it can kind of morph into one question, and this is directed to you, Rachel. So we've seen news of businesses, established businesses in New York City, like Goldman Sachs, potentially thinking about moving to other states like Florida. How do you think the next administration can repair relationships, retain and attract more business and entrepreneurs? And then the second question on top of that, outside of tax programs, what other tools is a city considering to incentivize commercial real estate activity?
There's a lot in there. So I'll say so certain things are out of our purview. So I'll talk about the things that are in our purview. You know, first of all, incentives are executed at the state level. It's not a city level. So all the ICAP and various programs are done by the state. So it's not that easy. One thing, as I said, we've learned and through the relationships is recognizing that we actually have a partnerships team that when companies or foreign delegations come into the city, you know, we sell them on New York, and we've actually retooled and revamped that team, and they're doing roadshows with the bids and the various business groups and REBNY and folks like that to say, we want to be your partner as you have opportunities to help sell New York City. We want to, how can we give you information and support that? It's not just about incentives. I mean, I'm debating bringing this up as an example, but since I worked all on it on like Amazon, for example, however that went down, they weren't interested in coming to New York City for the incentive package per se. You know, that's what got a lot of the press, but in fact, it's like nothing compared to what the competitors. They came here for the talent. They came here for the infrastructure. They came here for the 8.5 million people that already live here, and they saw the talent pool. And I know this because I was in the room with the discussions. So those fundamental facts that make, as Chad was talking about, like why companies want to be, that's not changing, and we have to continue to like have great quality talent, and that will continue to attract there. So investing in education, investing in our universities, and investing in attracting the talent, the young people, that's why companies want to be here. We really think that is a message we need to do a better job getting out, and to continuing to support it.
Great. Thank you. Rachel, you are a popular lady today. I believe this one is for you as well. So the impending budget shortfalls that you are anticipating this year, for all the tax exempt bonds and tax incentives that fuel real estate development from nonprofit and for-profit developers, do you see that being an issue?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
So with the impending government budgetary shortfalls, is that going to restrict your ability for the issuance of tax-exempt bonds and tax incentives that fuel real estate development for nonprofit and profit tenants and developers? So do you think there'll be like issues, since the budget obviously is
yeah, I mean, there you probably read about it in the paper about pipeline issues with the ability for the city to support as much, the whole pipeline around affordable housing. Although we did just work with our colleagues at HPD and HDC to close a large development up in Bronx Point with L&M and Type A, with the hip hop museums going. That was a huge undertaking. And so there's only so much volume cap and the ability, and yes, it has been affected. I mean, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been in the news. So, some, again, as I said, some of the programs are at the state level, and there'll be issues for the city and the next administration to figure out, and whether or not the Biden administration comes to support city and states as is needed to help fill in some of the extraordinary costs that all of the states and cities across the city had to absorb for pandemic response, will go a long way to helping people do, investment. But they're going to have to look at various stimulus packages and investment in infrastructure and investment in projects as part of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. I'll take the heat off you. And Chad, I have a question for you from myself. You mentioned reading a book. I'm a big reader. Do you have any book recommendations just in general for business or life, or anything that you've really has impacted you? And please don't tell me Art of the Deal.
Oh my God, no, I would never do that. Yeah, look, I'm reading constantly. I just picked up I Love Capitalism, which is actually a really interesting read. It's by one of the founders of Home Depot. I'll just give you some of the books that have been just pretty good for me in my career, and I'll tell you why. I think it's for all you guys out there who want good reads. I've read these all, so I'm giving it the Chad seal of approval, but look, you're going to get what you pay for. You asked me, it's free. So I'd say, look, I like I Love Capitalism. I like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Anyone who's in real estate should just read it. And Cash Flow Quadrants. It's good for your professional life and just for your personal life. I remember reading The Millionaire Next Door and loving that one too. It's just good foundational fundamentals for people to read. I think the biggest skill you can have is the ability to communicate, specifically in a corporate environment. And the book I love for that is The Perfect Presentation. So good. Guarantee you, if you start to practice what's in that book, you will get promoted, guaranteed. And then the last one that I think people should read in business is this book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Oh, it's so good. So my team and I, we read it once a year, and it'll have you think about your business and who you serve in a totally different way. So there you go. There's a couple of books for you.
Thank you.
Those are great. We might have to start a YMWRA book club. I love that your team reads a book together. That's really, really cool.
Oh yeah, one last one, which is good, just about your life, is it's called The One Thing. And I think it's by the guy who started Keller Williams. I can't remember, but it really has you think about your life backwards. So like when it's time to go and you're laying there, what are you thinking about? And it'll force you to think about your life in a totally different paradigm.
Great. That sounds awesome. Well, that brings us to 1 o'clock. I want to thank Rachel and Chad so much for giving us their time. I think this was super interesting, and I think we all learned something new. And now we have some good reading assignments as well. So I thank you all very much. And everyone else, we will see you at our next luncheon in February.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.